today. They left the port of Longyearbyen in Norway, and I know it's in Svalbard, and that's, I think Svalbard is that small, when I looked it up, a small coal mining town. And they're known for northern lights, and Char saw whales, walrus, seal, reindeer, polar bears, birds, and glaciers. And so Char, we're just thrilled that you're here today and that technology is working and you can proceed. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I am going to click on share my screen. And okay, there we go. All right, so can everybody see that?
Yes,
All right.
looks good.
So as Rolene said, I'm going to clarify one thing. You know, she says, I love to travel, which is true, but my focus is polar bears. So I only go where I can find polar bears, basically. So Svalbard is actually an archipelago that is, which is a chain of islands that is located in the Arctic Ocean. It lies between 74 degrees and 81 degrees north latitude. So it's right inside the Arctic Circle. The largest island of the archipelago is Spitsbergen, which is this island here. There are about 2,100 glaciers of various sizes in the archipelago. It takes up about 60% of the total area. And the largest glaciers, you can see where the white is, that those are the glaciers. The largest glaciers are called ice caps and are found mostly on the eastern side, which you can see here. The first undisputed discovery of the archipelago was by an Dutch explorer, Willem Barents, in 1596. He named the largest island Spitsbergen after the mountains on the western side of the island, and Spitsbergen means pointed mountains in Dutch. In 1920, the Svalbard Treaty was entered into by the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, Denmark, the United States, Italy, France, Sweden, Norway, and Japan. It was later ratified by other countries, including the Soviet Union and Canada. Now there are about 46 parties to the treaty. The treaty recognizes Norwegian sovereignty over Svalbard, and that Norwegian law applies within the archipelago. It allows certain rights for the parties of the treaty, including that their citizens may reside and engage in business activities, hunting and fishing in the archipelago. Although Svalbard belongs to the Kingdom of Norway, two settlements in the archipelago, and I'm going to go back one slide, two settlements are mostly populated by Russians and Ukrainians. Barentsburg, which is right just a little south of Longyearbyen, and then
I'm not seeing anything. I don't see your slide, Char. Does everybody see her slides?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, wonder what I'm doing wrong.
You have to go up to
you
view.
didn't see any of it, Rolene?
No, I saw the first one with a map.
Well, that's what
Okay.
What do I do? I'm on an iPad, Apple iPad.
Well, that's a good question.
You should see, I'm on an
Oh.
iPad and it's a map now.
Okay, I see it now. Yeah, I had
Okay.
to touch it, but I see it now. Sorry, I do see
Okay.
it now. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So Barentsburg and Pyramiden are settlements by Ukrainians, Russians and Ukrainians. There are about 450 people in Barentsburg, which is a mining town, and fewer than 10 people live in Pyramiden, which is now considered a ghost town. So the town of Longyearbyen is roughly 807 miles from the North Pole. It's the world's northernmost urban community. Most of the residents are Norwegian, but there are people who live there from about 50 countries. All in all, about 2,100 people live in Longyearbyen. The town is named after an American businessman and mining pioneer named John Monroe Longyear, and he established the first coal mine on Svalbard in 1906, and he erected buildings and named the settlement Longyear City. But in 1916, the Store Norske Spitsbergen Coal Company, which would be Norwegian coal company, took over the mining operations from Longyear's Arctic Coal Company, and the settlement was renamed Longyearbyen. Mining is the only commercial activity that has survived for more than a century. It is still going on. There are currently 2 working mines, one near Longyearbyen and the other one in Barentsburg. This is a picture of the Svalbard church, which of course is the northernmost church in the world. It is part of the Church of Norway, which is an evangelical Lutheran church. The town has a lot of structures that are quite colorful. I found that interesting. You can see up on the hillside these fences. Those were erected a few years ago after there had been heavy snows and an avalanche. So those are there to try and protect any future avalanches. This is downtown Svalbard. It's probably about 4 blocks long, and the center street is a walking path only. There are shops, there's a hospital, there's a school, hotels, restaurants. I think in the corner here in this building, there was a restaurant that I had my lunch in the first day, and I had a Moby Dick burger, which is what you think it is. It was whale meat, and it was very interesting. This is in the corner here, in the right corner. That is the Svalbard Museum. It's a rather small museum, but has a lot of interesting information in it about whales and different birds and polar bears and the things that are seen around the area. In the afternoon, I met up with my group and we took a small tour, got on a little bus and took a tour around the town. And we went up past one of the working mines to an area that is called IceCat Svalbard Radar Facility. And IceCat stands for European Incoherent Scatter Scientific Association. It consists of 2 large radar dishes that are used to study the interaction between the sun and the earth. And this was inaugurated in 1996. On the way back down towards to get ready to board our ship, we saw our first reindeer just on the hillside. We boarded our ship. This is the Polaris, and it is a refitted British Navy service ship. It sails under the French flag. This is our captain, Frederick. The crew is all French, and as you can imagine, our cuisine was also French, and it was very yummy. We boarded the ship probably around 6 o'clock in the evening. So the first evening we were on our way to our first destination the next morning. But on the way, we did come across a number of different whales, blue whales, fin, minke, and humpback whales. These, I believe, are blue whales. This I'm thinking is a minke, but I'm not 100% sure. You can tell by the fins, but I haven't been around whales long enough to really be able to tell the difference, but it was interesting to see the whales. So the first morning trip, we were in Forlandsundet, which is about 88-kilometer long sound that separates Prince Karlsfjord and Spitsbergen. We took the little Zodiac to this bit of land and observed a large herd of male walrus. I think they call it a pod. A lot of them were on shore, but there were some who were swimming in the water. They're pretty graceful, but it seems very cumbersome when they get out of the land, or out of the water, excuse me, and come up to the land. But when they do get together, they do huddle in a group, and I would imagine that's to try and keep warm. We had one young male who was a little curious about us and our Zodiac. So he came swimming over and got very close to the Zodiac. We were wondering if he was actually going to try and attack the pontoon, but he didn't. He checked us out and then he took off. So we headed back to our boat, or our ship rather, and went on our way to our next destination. And along the way, we saw a few more whales. So we were on our way to an area that had a carcass of a large whale that has been known to attract polar bears. So we got to that area and we did find polar bears, but they were sleeping at the time. So it wasn't worth getting in the Zodiac and trying to get closer, because they were on the shore and so close. We wouldn't be able to get out of the Zodiac anyway. But little later that afternoon, right before dinner time, the captain saw that the bears were moving. So they held dinner, and a few of us got into the Zodiac and went over and watched the bears. So it is a mom and 2 cubs. The cubs are probably around 18 months old. This would be the last year that the cubs would stay with their mother. So we just watched them for a while. Because we were in a Zodiac, there was a lot of movement. So it was hard to get real clear pictures of them, but we did the best we could. And it was interesting to watch them for a while. Then we headed out to our next destination. We traveled mostly during the night to so that by the morning we were where we wanted to be for the next day's activities. I will also mention that in Svalbard, in the summertime, the sun never sets. So it was always light outside. So our next morning, we were going to a place called Virgo. But first we got into the Zodiac and went around this little bay area and looked at harbor seals. It was kind of hard to see them at first because they're roughly the same color as the rocks. So like this looks like a rock, but it's a seal. So we watched them for a while, and then we made it to Virgo. This is a place, it's a natural amphitheater that was used as a base for whalers who were after bowheads in the early 17th century. The remains of the blubber rendering furnaces can still be seen. Also, there a man by the name of Arnold Pike built a house here in 1888. You can see the remnants of the frame of the house, and he would winter in the bay for pleasure. And keeping in mind, since it's all daylight during the summer, it is total dark during the winter. So I'm not sure why he would winter for pleasure, but that's what he did. There were several explorers who attempted to make it to the North Pole from this location. Swedish engineer Solomon Andre attempted a flight by hydrogen balloon in 1897 and was unsuccessful. And then in 1906, Walter Wellman, an American who was passionate about exploration, built a hangar for an airship, but the airship's engines self-destructed. His final attempt was made in 1909, but after about 60 miles, he had to turn back. This site is an important cultural heritage site. So any groups who want to disembark have to get permission from the governor of Svalbard. There's not a lot of wildlife in the area, but this is, and I'm probably not going to pronounce this correctly, but this is tufted saxifraga. There's also poppies and some grasses that are native to the area, but you see them springing up around rock formations. After we were at Virgo, we went into a small glacier, and this was our first glacier that we visited. While we were there, we heard a big boom, and we watched a calving, the glacier calving. I don't know if you can tell the spray, the water spray here. So a huge chunk of ice broke off and crashed into the water. Then a little while later, we heard another boom, and this time we saw a shooter, which is when the chunk of ice breaks off under the water line and shoots up. There are the colors in some areas of the glaciers was just amazing. The blues, the different shades of blues. There are a lot of birds near the glaciers. These are black-legged kittiwakes. They're the most numerous gull species. They look very much like our seagulls, except for the black legs. Later we went back to the ship, and after dinner, our crew got into Zodiac and took off. So these are some of the crew. This is Chloe, who was kind of our maitre d', for lack of a better word. Willem was an engineer. This is Leo, who was an assistant or apprentice bosun rather. Thomas was an engineer, and this is Jerome, who was our chef. So we didn't know where they had gone, but the next morning they went back out for a little while, and they came back, and Chloe showed us what they had been doing. They had set lines to catch some fish, and they caught these two Arctic char, which we had for dinner that night. So this day we were on our way to another glacier, but we did see a male polar bear way up on the hillside. And I have to say, I'm sad to say, that was it for polar bears. We never saw any more the rest of the trip. And this was the second day. So that was a little disappointing. So now we are at the Monachobrin in Leifdefjorden. The Monachobrin is one of the largest glaciers in Spitsbergen. It is a very, very vast field of ice. You can see the different layers, striation layers in there. Some areas are very smooth, some are very rugged. There are a lot of caves that have been carved out over, hundreds of years of wave action. A lot of ice floating in the water. Again, a lot of birds, mostly the black-legged kittiwakes. The water at times was so dead calm that you could see the mirror image of the mountains in the back. That was quite beautiful. Some icebergs. Obviously, these are things that have bergs that have broken off the glacier, and they just float in the water. And these birds here in flight are northern fulmars, and they're chasing the kittiwakes. Now, northern fulmars typically don't really hunt for food themselves. They attack other birds and steal their food instead. We were later in the day, we were on our way to an area that has a little shack called the Texas Bar. And on the way there, we passed through this rock formation that you can see all of the striations and the curves and everything. This is the result of the rock being heated and the pressure just kind of molding it over millions of years. And now we're at the area. This is called an alluvial fan. We got out here and took a little walk around the area. And when we were done with that, we went down to the Texas Bar. The Texas Bar was a trapper's hut that was built in 1927. It is still in use. People can rent it and stay there. We didn't go inside, but we just set up our little happy hour there and had some mulled wine or beer and peanuts and just spent a little time there. On the way back to our ship, we came across a bearded seal in the water. And then this is a young black guillemot. So then we're back at the ship and we're on our way to the next destination point. And in the morning, we were in Kinvika in the Murchison Fjord. This is the highest point we were at, just over 80 degrees north. And that is literally in the Arctic Circle. The Kinviken was a research site that was built in 1957 for a Swedish Finnish research expedition that was held during the International Geophysical Year of 1957 to 1958. It consists of 10 buildings that are set far apart. So in case of any fire, the whole complex wouldn't be affected. One of the buildings was a sauna, which makes it the northernmost sauna in the world. The buildings are still in, this is a bunkhouse. The buildings are still in very good shape, and there's mattresses and utensils and various things that are still inside. They left all of the equipment that they had there. The site was used again in 2007, 2008 for the International Polar Year. The main focus of the research that was done here was the ice cap on Vestfana, which is the northwest area of the island. After we walked around this area, we did go back to the ship for lunch. And then a little later in the afternoon, a group of us came back and we went on a hike, about a 4-mile hike around the area. During that time, we saw a few more reindeer. One thing I'll to know, when we get out on the land at any time, there's always at least one person with a gun who is watching for polar bears. So they're always watching out for our safety. Then the next day, we went to Hinlopen Strettet, or Hinlopen Strait. In the morning there, we saw 4, these are thick-billed murre, or Brunix guillemot is another name for them. Then we were in Murchison Fjorden ice field, and we saw a number of different types of seals. This is a hooded seal, diving into the water. We also saw a harp seal and ring seal, and then we came across a bearded seal on an ice floe. So we watched him for a while. And again, you know, the water is so calm that you see the mirror image of whether it's the icebergs or the seals or whatever we're looking at. It's quite interesting. We had lunch and then we went back out, and we're still in this same area, but it was quite large, so we're still looking for things. And we found a large male walrus on an ice floe, so we watched him for a while. You can see that, you know, their tusks, they use their tusks to dig up the food, and their hygiene isn't really the best. So, you know, this is like blood and on the tusk there. This again is just an example of some of the icebergs that we see as we're traveling along. You know, they're quite good size. I don't know whether or not they are comparable to what sunk the Titanic, but they were pretty big. Let's see here. The next morning, we were in a little area called Longyearbyen, and this was a little cove, and we saw an Arctic fox. It's hard to see him here because he's still in his summer coat, but there he is, kind of in the middle of the screen. And then there were some harbor seals in the area too, so we watched them for a little while, and then we motored out of that little bay area and looked to see if we could find any other animals or polar bears, and we came across a mother walrus and her calf. Then when we headed back to the ship again in that bay area, there were some Arctic terns that were flying around. The Arctic tern is the only tern that nests on Svalbard. And the interesting thing about this bird is that it migrates every year from Svalbard to Antarctica. So one end of the globe to the other. We did see quite a few puffin, mostly in flight, but I finally did get one in the water. And then this photo is from our guide, Mick. So I threw that in because his pictures are a little better than mine. Later in the day, we stopped at Smeerenberg Glacier. We got quite close to the glacier, and as the closer we got, you could really feel the intense cold. Again, you can see the striations in the ice, all the birds in the water. We heard booms, but we didn't see any more calving. We're still in the same area a little later in the afternoon, and you can see this heavy fog rolling in over the top of the mountains at a rather fast pace. So then during the night again, we're heading towards our next stop, which is the Ocean Sarsfjell, or the Three Kings. These are among the highest peaks in Svalbard. It's a mountainous peninsula on the inner Kongsfjorden, which is between the fjord and Longyearbyen Glacier. We hiked along here for a while, and you can see these are the Three Kings, and they're named that because the tops of them kind of pyramid shaped, and then the slopes of the mountains with the snow cover kind of give it the appearance of like a robe or a cape. So that's where they got the name of the Three Kings. During our walk, there's some more views of the Three Kings and the glacier that we were in. We came upon a small herd of reindeer, and we were able to get very close to them. They didn't seem to be upset with us being there. Mom and a calf. There were 2 males, 2 females in this calf. So we, took our hike up the mountainside. When we came back down, the calf saw us and decided to see what we were up to. So he followed us down the hill, and he got down to the bottom, and he looked at us, and he just kind of started talking to us. Mom could hear him, and so she started down the hill to see what was going on, but then he took off, and so she saw he was okay and was fine. This was a large iceberg that was in that bay area that we were in. I included this because this is a really unique berg in that the cutouts from all the wave action and the pebbling of the ice is very unique. And again, the colors of that come through, the turquoise colors are just incredible. Later in the day, we went to an area called Ny London. Ernest Mansfield set up equipment to start a marble quarry. He had discovered marble in this area, and but he soon discovered that the marble was cracked by frost and therefore was useless. So he just abandoned all of the equipment and the buildings and just left it there. So again, it's just, it's a popular place for folks to stop and walk around and see. Now the next day we are in the Krossfjorden. In the morning, we got into the Zodiac and motored around a bit. There were nests of birds. This is a glaucous gull, which is the largest gull on Svalbard. We saw a reindeer on the hillside. We did see another fox, but he had the summer coat, so it was kind of hard to see. Then we headed back to the ship. Again, the water was so calm that it just gives you that mirror image. So this is half of our group in one of the Zodiacs. I put this in here so you could see how we get in and out of the ship when we take our little ventures out and about. When the water is calm, it's not too difficult, but when the water is, when there's a lot of wave action, it gets a little challenging to get in and out of the boat, just holding on to that rope. But the crew is always there to help us. From there, we went to Longyearbyen, or the Juliet Glacier, and we got out on shore and walked up along this ridge and spent some time viewing that. This is a pretty deep glacier, and you can see the rows and rows and rows of ice that is there. A lot of it's dirty, a lot of it's still pristine white. Again, while we were there, we did have a small calving. This I thought was an interesting chunk of ice that was on the shore. It was pretty crystal clear, but then it has these, I think they're like air bubbles pattern that just made this design. This is the calving that we did see. So after our walk, we're heading back to the ship, and I was in the first Zodiac, and we had just taken off, and the captain radioed our guide and said, "Hold on, we have a problem." So it turned out that his Zodiac had sprung a leak, so that one of the pontoons was deflated. They had to get another pontoon from the ship, and that got our crew, and then towed the injured Zodiac back to the boat. So that was a little bit of excitement. This is a northern fulmar. And then I also saw a jellyfish. It's not a very good picture, but it's the first jellyfish I'd ever seen. So now we're on to the last full day of our cruise. And we started out on Pullapinten, which is a little spit of land. And we found a small herd of male walrus. And quite a few of them had broken tusks. I'm assuming that, I don't know if they broke when they were fighting, or if they broke trying to, dig for food, but quite a few of them had broken tusks. Our last stop for the day was Elk Hornet. And we did get out, and we landed on this little beach area and then climbed up the side of the cliffs here and then walked along this flat area. There were pockets of green that we came across with little pools or streams. Otherwise, it was, pretty brown area. Saw an Arctic fox still in the summer coat. Then we walked among the reindeer, small herd of reindeer. You notice that the antlers look pink in color, or from pink to red. And that is because of the, when they rub the velvet off the antlers, it brings the blood vessels, brings the blood to the surface in the antlers. And so they appear red for a while until the blood sinks back into the bone marrow. This male hasn't shed his velvet yet. Then we hiked up a little bit of a hill towards an area where our guide knew that there was a fox den. So we found that, and it was interesting to see a lot of the remains of their meals scattered all over the place. We headed back down the hill. This is a flock of barnacle geese. And this is an Arctic skua, purple sandpiper. And then this is a juvenile glaucous gull. So after this, it was late in the afternoon. We headed back to the ship, had our dinner, and then headed back to Longyearbyen. On our way there, we finally had our first sunset. The sun, it didn't get totally dark, but we did finally see some color. It was quite beautiful. But now we're back in port, and it's probably about 11 p.m. So you can see it is still light out. But all in all, it was a wonderful experience. It was disappointing that we only saw 3 polar bear, but it's such a vast area, and the bears, in the summertime, the bears do what's called a walking hibernation. So they're not going to move around. They're not hunting. They might go from ice floe to ice floe, but since it's such a vast area, they go to areas where they've been known to be, and it's luck if you see them. Our luck wasn't with us, but we did see a lot of wonderful things. And here is finally back on Longyearbyen. I finally saw an Arctic fox in his winter coat, close enough that I could grab some pictures of him. And that's our group. There were 12 of us, and our guide, this is Rupert Pilkington, who was the head of the expedition. And it really truly was a wonderful adventure. I will share one last thing with you. I had to kill some time the next day, so I had signed up to go on a hike to Bird Cliff. And the way I read it, I thought it was just going to be a nice leisurely walk, opportunity to take pictures of birds and things. But I found out quickly when I got there that it was a hike. Oh, I'm sorry, I'll go back. It was a hike to this point. So about 440 feet up a very steep, narrow path. So on the way to the start of our trail, we saw some reindeer, and then we're starting up the path. That's our guide and our guide dog, Tequila. Now we're at the top, and this little stone altar here has a book there, and it's tradition for groups to go out there and sign the book. So there we all are out on this tiny little point, and then we headed back down. So it was the hardest thing I've ever done. I thought I was going to die. And I'll never do it again. But I made it. And so, are there any questions?
I have one, Char.
Yeah,
You said that you had Arctic char for dinner one night. Is there no commercial fishing in that area?
I don't believe so.
Huh.
But I mean, keep in mind that we were on the ship. So anything that, that if we were going to have fresh fish, they would have to catch it. But I think the only commercial venture is the coal mining. There is one thing, I didn't have a picture of it, but and I'm not sure I'm going to get this right, but there's a structure that is a seed house. So it houses seed of I don't
Heirloom
know,
seeds,
every
yeah.
plant imaginable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was there. So I think the other things that happen in Longyearbyen is the tourism.
Mm.
So, I mean, my group was a small group and it was a private tour. Rupert puts together, this little group on his own, but they do have a number of other ships that provide tours and groups that do things. So
What was the name of the company, the tour company?
there was no name of the tour company. The guy's name is Rupert Pilkington.
Okay.
Pilkington. And I met him in Churchill. He used to put together the programs called the Lords of the Arctic that I did. And that's where I met him and found out about this. So.
Char,
So what was the,
Could you-
oh, I'm sorry, Sylvia, go ahead.
is it okay to speak?
Yeah.
Char, could you tell us what you would wear on a trip like this when you're out in the elements?
I wore, let's see here. I'm wondering if I go back.
Okay.
I'm going to look for it might be easier to.
I stopped your screen share.
Oh, okay. Never mind then. That's
But you
fine.
can start it up again. You can start it up again
Let's see here.
if you like.
Where'd it go?
You'd have to push screen share again.
Yeah, I know, but it was,
Okay.
you were hiding it.
I'm sorry. I
No,
pushed
that's
the
all
wrong
right.
button. I pushed the wrong button.
And share. Okay, so this is me here in the here I'm gonna go from not what I meant to do, sorry. Let's try this again. Actually, this is probably an easier winter gear. I wore thermal underwear. I had wind pants on. I had a thermal jacket. I wore wool. I had a gaiter, wool gaiter on my neck, and I wore on my feet, I wore muck boots that are designed for Arctic temperatures. And I did that because we get in and out of the water a lot, and the muck boots are waterproof, so made it easier for that. Mittens, so just like you would in the wintertime.
So what was the
What was
temperature?
the temperature?
I would say that the temperatures were probably anywhere from the mid-20s to the mid-30s.
Okay.
Above?
They didn't always tell us above. They didn't always tell us what the temperature was. So I'm kind of guessing. Again, when we were in the at the glaciers, it was much colder because you had the cold from the glacier pouring off and made things a lot colder. But and the wind, obviously, you know, you do have wind chill factors there. So.
What was
And-
the elevation there? Like on that hike at the end, and how?
The hike at the end was, I guess I'm not real sure of what the elevation was. That Bird Cliff hike, we were at sea level at the base of it, and I believe that it was about 440 feet up. So.
Char, tell me about your journey from Minnesota to Norway. Where did you land in Norway, and how did you get to that small town?
Well, I decided to take a little detour when I left. I went to Iceland and spent a day and a half there. Then from Iceland, I flew into Oslo. And from Oslo, I flew directly to Svalbard. The airport in Longyearbyen was built in 1975, and again, that makes it the northernmost airport in the world. There are two airlines that fly in, SAS and Norwegian Air. So the trip over wasn't bad. The trip back, we left Longyearbyen, we flew to Tromsø, and I had a 5-hour layover there. Then I flew to Oslo and had a 7-hour layover there. Then I flew to Stockholm, and then finally to Chicago, and then Chicago to Duluth. So the way back was very long, but.
Char,
Mhm.
your photographs are exceptional. I
Very
mean,
nice.
just I mean, it's beautiful. Did you use a phone camera, or did you use, what did you
No.
use?
I have a Nikon Coolpix
Okay,
510. So it's it's not what do they call them? DSL. It doesn't have exchangeable lenses or anything. I just
right.
point and shoot. But
Well, it's
it
beautiful.
has
It's a point and
it has
shoot, but
the
it's
longest.
exceptional.
Thank you. It has the longest zoom of that type of camera.
Okay.
So
What
Char,
were the
where are you going
accommodations?
next? Oh, I'm sorry.
What-
I'm
Go ahead,
sorry.
Patty. Go
I
ahead.
just wonder where you're going next, and if you are going next somewhere.
I was going to go to Churchill last November. I had made my down payment the December before, December 2019, but as you can imagine, it got canceled because of COVID. So they carried my down payment over to this year. So I am planning on going to Churchill in November and keeping my fingers crossed that the border will be open so I can go. So I really missed, I love Churchill area, and you're always guaranteed seeing polar bear. Well, I shouldn't say guaranteed, but you're more apt to see more polar bears there because they're confined. They're stuck on the land until the ice freezes. So there isn't as large an area for them to roam around. So
Char,
Yeah.
what led to your strong interest in polar bears? Was that something you realized as a child?
No, I have been asked that question a few times, and I'm not 100% sure when it started or how. But we had the Duluth Zoo had polar bear cubs back in the early 70s, I think. And I'm thinking that's where it started. And so it kind of slowly started with, I would collect little figurines, and then people would give me figurines as gifts, and it just kind of evolved from there. And my getting into Churchill, my first trip to Churchill came about through an artist by the name of Barbara Stone, who I discovered her artwork in Estes Park, Colorado in 1986, I think. And over the years, I actually had a chance to meet her and form a friendship. And so she put together a group to go to Churchill one year. That's her only, her subject matter is polar bears. That's all she does is polar bears. And so she goes to Churchill quite often. She was subject of one of the PBS specials about Churchill one year. She's called the Polar Bear Lady. So that's where that started. And then I just started going back on my own after that. So.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Char, this was just an excellent presentation. It was just so enjoyable.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it was good.
Thank you. And as you can see, Ellie, I finally figured out how to do the backdrop.
And now I'm having trouble with it.
And so now that's another iceberg.
Oh, that's great.
Well, I am recording it, and you can tell others that'll be on our YouTube channel. I'll send it to Lucy, and she'll put it on the Duluth Women's Club YouTube channel, so others can. She'll also put it on our website, I believe. So
You know,
others
yeah, maybe Rolene would put that. I forget about that, but I'd love to do that or recommend it. Maybe if that could go in our Sunday mailing too, that those are available. That would be awesome.
Mhm.
Mary, I think you had
Yes.
started to ask about the accommodations.
I did. You
Okay.
know, how big was that ship? And you didn't take any interior pictures that I saw. So
Yeah,
where,
and
how
I
did you
yeah.
sleep and everything?
The the ship was 750 feet long, I
it's
think.
big. Okay.
Yeah, but so the cabins, the cabins were pretty small. I had a double by myself, but each cabin has the bed and the bathroom. And in the bathroom, the shower, they're very tiny. I mean, it's just like you move like this. Sure. And but the shower, there's a little curtain there's a shower head on the ceiling, little curtain that wraps around, and you take your shower, and
Good enough. Call it a day.
Yep. And there's a desk and closet and drawers. So
You had enough room for your gear and all of
yeah,
that.
yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's awesome. It just sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful trip. I really appreciate, this was really a good presentation.
Yeah,
Thanks.
very good. Very good.
It was a wonderful time, great experience. So
Well, plan another one, plan another presentation. Please, not selfishly, but keep us in mind when you're traveling. Yeah, it was great.
well, if I do again, it's gonna be polar bears. So
Hey, that's all right. That's all right.
But there's extra things too, so it's all good.
Yeah.
It's all good to see all of it. I like it all. So, all right. What you got next week for us, Rolene?